In this fourth episode of Broker Breakdown, I'm talking to Marki Lemons-Ryhal, global best-selling author, keynote speaker, and real estate coach. And I get her insights on a whole host of topics about building and growing a real estate business. We talk about the power of the entrepreneurial mindset when getting into real estate, the surprising lack of formal business plans that are used, and then finding and speaking to your audience on social media to maximize your exposure and results. Marki's speaking schedule is booked out the entire rest of this year, so if you'd like to get her insight on some of these topics, stick around. We're going to get into that right now on Broker Breakdown. Hey Marki, thank you so much for joining me today.
I am elated to be here today. You know what? I've had the opportunity to now be home sitting in this chair ever since Friday, March the 13th, 2020. And finally, I have the opportunity to go back to work. I've been gainfully unemployed from my primary source of income, but I have 13 streams of income from the world of real estate. So the opportunity to build all those other streams presented itself in the midst of a pandemic.
Well, I love the attitude there, right? Your main source of income is cut out. You got plenty of others to go focus on, so that's great. Well, so as you're getting back onto the road here, I know you're obviously a speaker across the country for all kinds of real estate conferences, keynotes, all kinds of great stuff. You've got a bunch of stuff on the schedule, and I'm sure some of our guests are going to want to know where they can hear from you. So tell us a little bit about what are some of the topics you like to talk on, and where can maybe somebody catch your next presentation?
So, Nick, I have the opportunity to teach realtors how to earn up to a 2,682% return on their marketing dollar leveraging social media and technology. And I do so as a real estate keynote speaker and 4-time international best-selling author. I work for real estate associations, banks, and title companies globally. And before the pandemic, I would spend 100 nights per year on the road, going from real estate association to real estate association. However, in 2020, as a result of none of those events occurring face-to-face, I had the opportunity to do 125 virtual events. And so I support realtors with education products and services, whether that is books, podcasts, online courses, memberships, and I happen to also be a part of a franchise as their director of education. So my entire life is all things real estate related, but most importantly, I like to generate leads using social media and technology.
I love it. Yeah, there's so much to cover there. I mean, we're going to get a little bit of it today, but I'm sure we could have many more conversations on all those topics, right?
Yes.
And I think, I'm excited to talk to you. We both spoke at the Virtual Handshake Conference a couple months back, and your presentation was awesome. I love your energy. It's just fun to watch you talk about anything, really. So I'm excited to have a chance to ask you some questions today. So we want to talk today in our conversation about brokerage growth, right? So how do you attract the right people? I think another part of it is how do you retain the right people, right? I think that's an aspect that can get overlooked a little bit in favor of just continuing to recruit new people. So hopefully we can talk a little bit on both of those. But I want to start out by just leaving it a little bit open-ended. Like if you were to talk to a broker or a team leader, somebody that's looking to expand their business in that sense, where would they start? What are maybe the first 1 or 2 steps you think they should take, or is there some planning they should be doing? What advice would you give us there?
Well, I would say that everyone needs to start with a business plan, and I happen to be a proud Chicago 5th generation entrepreneur. My family owns Chicago's second oldest black restaurant, and even though I was raised in the restaurant business, my mother started a food truck business back in 1982, and I have an MBA degree in marketing. I still had to go back through a program called the Women Self-Employment Project because my MBA program taught me how to come in and take over existing companies. It did not teach me about startup. And what I see every single day, people come into the world of real estate and they come in based on a pre-licensed course. The pre-licensed course does not teach you how to sell real estate or run and operate a brokerage. Therefore, I believe everyone, because we are all entrepreneurs in this industry, right? If you think about being an independent contractor, they need to have a business plan, not only for their real estate business if they're in sales, but also for their brokerage. And I'm seeing time and time again, people do not dig deep enough when it comes to their business plan, having in mind exactly who they want, where they want to dominate. And as I tell people, with my association, the Chicago Association of Realtors, every single year we have a sales award event. And when I look at that sales award event, and I'm going to take you back now 15 years, if I go back, only 25% of our top producers from any calendar year performs at or above the level they're performing now. And the reason is a lot of people come into real estate based on adrenaline, not because they have a solid business plan. So planning, that business plan is going to be critical to success, and it's the one thing that I don't believe we spend enough time on.
That's great, and I fully agree. I mean, your opinion, I think, holds more weight here than mine, but that, I've seen that a lot. Like we've worked with any small business owner. I think this is a really common issue. And so I want to dig on just this part of it for a second here, and then we can talk about some of the strategies for building off of that business plan. Let me ask this, which is, from a marketing perspective, like I fully understand the idea of understanding who you're trying to recruit or attract, both as a customer or as an employee, what they need to hear from you, having all that predetermined, because it streamlines the rest of the process. You're doing a lot less guessing, what to say, all that kind of stuff. Why do you think so many business owners, well, it's almost like they resist it? Like I've had conversations with people, I'm like, you need to pick a niche. You need to know who your ideal customer is. And like, I want everybody. There is no ideal customer. So what do you think is going on there? What's the mental block that holds people back from even making that initial decision?
I tell people all the time, there are a lot of people who are entrepreneurs for the sake of saying they're an entrepreneur. Just the thought that I own something. Just because you own something does not mean that you're making money. And so we have a lot of people who are entrepreneurs for the sake of being an entrepreneur, not because they want to earn money, not because they want to utilize their time at its highest and best level, not because they want the highest return on their dollar. And so the first thing is we have to differentiate between the people who just want to say they own something versus those who truly want to own and operate a sustainable business that they want to essentially create a legacy with and leave something for their heirs, right? Once we start breaking that down, and they're not entrepreneurs. They weren't raised to be entrepreneurs, and I think that we set unrealistic expectations for what a real estate business looks like, because everyone thinks, oh, this is fun, I like houses. Well, first of all, your job is not really selling houses. Your job is that of fiduciary responsibilities and providing agency contingent upon the state that you're in to the person you're working for. So selling the house is a fun part of our job, but it's not the core of our job. And they don't understand that entrepreneurship. They never looked at accounting, econ, finance, all of that is a part of a business. Inventory. I was talking to someone yesterday and I said, we got to look at inventory. So I compared it to the barbecue business, right? I know that we've sold more pork rib tips than anyone else in the city of Chicago. Well, how many pounds do we have to order every single week? And how many slices of bread come with every single order? And then we have to have a tray, and we have to have wax paper, and we have to have a brown paper bag. So with that, I need to make sure that I'm ordering everything, right, to go with that. Well, when it comes to selling a property, you still got all of these additional products and services that come with this one sale. And who can afford this product? So because I started my real estate career actually exactly 22 years ago on July the 31st, when I came into real estate, I was leaving the restaurant business, and I was an unwedded mother, and I needed to be able to take care of my child in the manner in which he had become accustomed to. Okay. I had to sit down and look at those numbers. But what I instantly realized was that my friends in my immediate sphere of influence could not afford to buy what it is that I decided I wanted to sell. And you have to align everything, because I can't force feed a $250,000 house to a person who only earns $50,000 a year. They're not going to qualify. So to sell these $250,000 houses, I need to consistently be around people who earn a minimum of $100,000 per year, Because the rule of thumb is a person can afford a house at 2.5 times their gross annual income. It's a little higher now because the interest rates are lower. And that mindset is not what we're seeing. We're seeing, oh, I like houses, I want to go sell them. But it's a lot more that goes into that. And you want to become a numbers person, and you want to look at your numbers, and you want to leverage your time. And the older I get, the more strategic I become with my time, because I don't have as much of it left.
Love it. Yeah, that's some great wisdom on its own right there. That's good stuff. So I do want to get into the growth strategies, but I love this particular part of the conversation because this is something I think a lot about, which is, so here's my follow up on that is, you've got people that are coming into this that want to call themselves entrepreneurs. We know that it's like, 85% of realtors fail within the first 5 years or some sort of crazy high number. Is it possible if somebody comes into this and they come in with the wrong idea, right? Like, it's going to be fun and it's just whatever, right? They're not thinking like an entrepreneur. Can that be shifted? Or is this something, there's also sort of an argument that like entrepreneurs are born and, you got to have the right mentality and, everything for it coming in. What's your opinion on that? Is that something you can develop or does it have to be natural?
I believe it's something you can develop. And let me tell you why I think it's something you can develop. I'm a graduate of the Landmark Forum. I believe if you change your mind, you can change anything. And so if you can change a person's mind, you can turn them into being an entrepreneur. However, you have to accept a person who does not want to change their mind. So when I got married, I instantly wanted to force my husband into the world of real estate. And we've been married now for 15 years. And my husband is very vocal. And he told me, he said, what part of I wasn't going to do this didn't you understand before we got married? Like, I never told you that lie, right? And I had to sit back. And at first I was a little disappointed. But as time went on, I became more thankful for the fact that my husband is a locomotive engineer. He'll have a pension plan. I'll have a spousal funded pension plan. I got Blue Cross Blue Shield. I got dental. I got vision, right? So as time went on, I'm like, oh, I'm glad that he spoke up for himself. He did not allow me to talk him into doing something because being an entrepreneur wasn't something he even mentally wanted to do, right? Now that he is a chef, he's thinking about, he wants a chef business, but it won't be the business that I do. And I said, well, we'll take it slow and see if this is what you really want to do, because I know that he's still going to have a shift in his mindset, but it's for what he's passionate about, not for what I'm trying to lead him to do, right? And so do I believe that a person can shift? Yes, but they have to want to shift, and their why has to be big enough. If not, nope, you can forever be stuck. And I see a lot of people who are forever stuck. They're still getting ready to become an entrepreneur. It's just not for everybody. But yep, I don't believe you're born. Very few people happen to be a fifth generation entrepreneur like I am. So I saw it every single day. My husband did not come from that household. His mother got up, she went to work every day. His father got up, he went to work every day. And so those were some of the things that happened in their house. That's not what happened at my house.
Gotcha. And that makes, I do have a follow up on that, just a short one. What's a locomotive engineer do?
So my husband drives a train for Union Pacific Railroad. So cool. He can drive freight line, he can drive commuter rail. That is what he is licensed and trained to do. By all means, it's a phenomenal job to have, and I'm glad that he has. It's a phenomenal job. And because he has a phenomenal job, it enables me to be creative because he can afford to take care of me whether I was to operate a business or not. So I can think creatively and outside of the box because I do something that a lot of people don't do. I live within my husband's means. So I know exactly, I don't do anything outside of his means if it's not cash, because that's another stressful part, and that's keeping up with the Joneses. And in the world of real estate, we have a bunch of people who keep up with the Joneses because they believe that perception is reality.
All right. Well, so let's come back to the conversation about, trying to find these entrepreneurs, trying to grow a brokerage or a team, right? And obviously, so there's kind of two things I guess I would ask about. One would be, how do you identify and then attract these entrepreneur types from the beginning, right? And assuming that's I would assume that's what you want to do. And then two would be, can brokers or team leaders develop people to that place, and should they be trying to even do that? So maybe two questions.
So here's what's interesting about real estate, right? In the world of real estate, we are all in competition with one another, but in order to get a real estate transaction closed, we must come back and collaborate, right? And you can develop a person, but always keep in mind that that person is an independent contractor and they have the right to go and become your competition one day. Therefore, as a team leader or managing broker, you have to change your mind about your thought process and just be willing to educate everyone in your marketplace. Because if everyone is better, hopefully, when you have the opportunity to do a deal with that person, they will be better as a result of you. And I've seen that happen in my past. So you have to be willing to educate everyone. But often what happens, the collaboration aspect comes in, right? So they don't want to share any of their secrets or what they perceive to be a secret with everyone, not keeping in mind what the industry really is like, right? We're all in competition, but to get a deal closed successfully, we have to come back and we have to collaborate. I had to change my mind about that. I was the agent who would go argue you down about anything as it pertained to my clients, like a mama bear, right? And then it hit me. I'm there acting on behalf of someone else. Do my clients want me to act a fool like I was acting a fool for them? And so I start asking my clients, how do you want me to treat this situation? Not one of my clients told me they wanted me to go and act a fool for them. Oh, Marki, let's see how we could work this out. Marki, I think this would be a better approach. Well, everything I'm doing is on their behalf. So I realized that the clients, the buyers and the sellers and the marketplace really want harmony in their transaction. I changed how I do business. So now I come from the concept to educate everyone who I come in contact with because it'll make our industry better. But that is because I am a industry leader in real estate, serving on boards and things of that nature, chairing committees. I am a major donor. Actually, I'm President Circle. So I'm giving at the highest level. And that changed how I do my business. I'm not just doing it for my brokerage. I'm not just doing it for my agents. I'm doing it for my association and I'm doing it for our industry. So that means that I need to give more to more people.
Interesting. Okay. So very sort of broad in the sense of treating everybody sort of equally and providing as much value as possible. So I know your core focus here is obviously social media, right? And we've talked before about the power of social media and just the way it's changed the way humans communicate with each other and the access you have to people. So let's say you're talking to a broker, team leader, somebody that is using social media. I think most people obviously are on these platforms at this point. But we run into a lot of folks that are still sort of very unsure about how to use it, right? Like, what should I be posting? Where should I post? All that kind of stuff. And obviously the answer is going to be dependent on the person you're talking to. But where do they start, right? So let's say somebody, they've been on Facebook for a few years. They know how to use it. They have some engagement and whatnot, but they're not really out there proactively utilizing it to grow their business. Again, let's assume they have a business plan and they know who they're trying to attract already. What happens next?
So that was a big assumption. I will say this. I attended a panel last week. I did not speak. Everybody talks about social media who barely uses social media. So I'm really annoyed by the amount of people who want to tell people what to do and they're barely doing it themselves. Just let me get that out the way. Okay. But with that being said, I recently, in the past 60 days, I deleted Twitter. I deleted Snapchat. I deleted TikTok. And I deleted Clubhouse. And the reason is it's okay to be great at a few platforms. And I decided I gave all those things up because I needed to focus more on YouTube. Now, my LinkedIn is strong. My Instagram is strong. My Facebook is ridiculously strong, right? Really, if you think about it, these are totally different audiences. So who do I really serve? So I understand that 70% of my audience is female, age 45 to 54. Where are they hanging out the most? oh, they're over on Facebook. They're over on Instagram. I went and I looked back at my analytics and I decided that I wanted to be the best at the platforms where women are hanging out age 45 to 54 because we have a lot in common. But that's also the core of the real estate industry. And so I left all of the low hanging fruit alone so that I could then come and just focus on a few platforms and rock it. And my engagement is very good on the platforms that I decided I wanted to hang out on, to the point that I don't even miss the ones that I'm no longer on, because I am now able to focus and go deeper on the ones that I've selected. I do believe you should have more than one, and I have
Okay.
more than one, but it was becoming overwhelming, right? Just to have all these different platforms, and I realized I need to focus on Reels. And Instagram is doing some interesting things, right? Because they want to take over market share from TikTok. They want to take that Snapchat market share. So I'm going to hang out where I already know my core audience is my biggest population. So it's not one size fits all. Comes back to that business plan and doing some research, understanding who that core client is and what is important to that core client. So I talk about things that traditionally you would not hear a lot of people talk about. I'm talking about lipedema, a fat disorder. I told women that they needed to go and get fitted for the proper size bra and the actual bra size that I wore. Because guess what? That's important to women age 45 to 54, because a lot of them been wearing the wrong size bra for 20 years. And the mere fact that they could sit there and probably look at themselves and be like, oh, I'm not supposed to have a bulge here, whatever the case may be, means that you might need a new bra. Those are the things that I talk about, and that's what gets them to slide into my inbox, because I'm cool like that. But you said something earlier about how people relate and refer to you. I have a generation of people who call me TT Marki, Auntie Marki. If they are in real estate and they're younger than 40, they have the permission to call me Auntie Marki. And literally, when I walk into real estate events, someone is going to call me Auntie Marki. Auntie Marki to me is a term. It's an endearing term, right? They
Right.
think of me as family, that trusted advisor, the one who's cooler than their mama, because I'm not going to pass judgment on them. But
Right.
they got to come over to my platforms to hang out. I'm not going to their platforms because I'm imparting knowledge. You got to come. You got to come and get that. So when I want something from someone, I got to go where they go.
Love it. Yeah.
Yeah.
That makes a ton of sense. I think that the one thing I see a lot of people struggle with is this idea. I mean, so what I love about this is, obviously not focusing on all the platforms because there's so many, and it, like you said, is totally overwhelming. But then taking this a step further and saying, I'm going to talk about things that I know I care about. I know my narrow target audience cares about, that are also not related to my business, right? Like, this is just personal stuff. It's a way to bond with that audience. We see a lot of people really struggle with that, right? And they really struggle with this idea of like, oh, well, why don't I just educate people on real estate all the time and that's it? And like, will that work? And, maybe a couple people out there that have made that work. But what you're talking about is more universally effective, right? I mean, everybody's going to have their sort of unique angles or unique aspects of things they can talk about. How do you decide what to talk about, right? So we're going past the real estate stuff. We're getting into more of the personal things. We're being a little vulnerable. I think that's where people get caught is like, oh, I'd love to talk about this thing, but am I going to offend people or am I going to turn certain people off? What do you say to that kind of concern?
You always run the risk of turning someone off, period. Okay.
Right.
And I'm a alpha sweetheart. There's four other organizations I could have been a sweetheart to. I'm a member of Delta Sigma Theta sorority. There were 3 other sororities I could have been a member of. So you're gonna always run the risk of not being in alignment with every person. What I think about is I don't do anything at the expense of others. Okay. So if me talking about the fact that a person needs to get fitted properly for a bra because it's going to help as we age with our back, our clothes are going to lay better, then that person would have to be offended. Because here's the thing, I'm likely to talk about that subject at any given time, right? So my number one thing is I don't do anything at the expense of others. But if my personal life offends you, if I talk about domestic abuse because my father was abusive to my mother and that offends you, if I talk about race issues and that offends you, then we weren't meant to be, we weren't friends anyway. Okay, because I'm not running around here. As I told people, when it comes to race, I've never told anyone they were prejudiced. I don't know if you're prejudiced or not. I know when you're not inclusive. Now that I can see. I know when you're not inclusive, right? I don't have to call you prejudiced. You're just not inclusive. We could see that, right? And so there are things that, once again, as a leader in the space, that I think you should talk about, because you find those other issues that you're able to connect with people at a higher level. I don't talk about men issues. I talk about women issues. I talk about when you go to the eye doctor at the age of 40 and you want to kick the eye doctor in the throat because they tell you you now need to wear a bifocal, right? That happens to a lot of 40 plus year old people. But you got to experience it first to understand what just happened at the eye doctor today. And they saying, because I remember I had a whole attitude. So what I go off of, I don't talk about other people's experiences. I talk about my personal experiences, knowing that I'm not the only one with that experience. I'm the person willing to talk about it. And how I know this is once I post, the amount of thank you cards that I receive, the amount of inboxes, the text messages, the emails. I have gifts that come to my house a couple of times a week from people all around the world because of something I said that resonated with them that they will not publicly talk about. And I'm not, because I owe confidentiality, I don't publicly talk about anyone else's problems. I talk about my problems. And as a result, people like, oh, I see that. I told you about lipedema. Some woman inboxes me every day about lipedema, a fat disorder. I have people sending me their pictures of their friends. And I tell them I'm not a doctor, okay? To say, well, do you think that this person has lipedema? Well, what I could tell you is I see 8 physical characteristics and they need to go see a doctor to be formally diagnosed. Most people didn't even know lipedema was a real, they still saying lymphedema. And I'm like, no, it's not lymphedema, it's lipedema. But guess what I did? I took my body and I went and had an illustrator design my body as a character because I wanted to show people, but I didn't necessarily want to show people. Right. And I didn't want to do what I see everybody else does. And that is to have some fake person drawn. I wanted them to see what it really looked like. And so always trying to connect with that audience, and that audience just happens to be me because I'm a female and I'm age 51 and I'm getting closer to the typical age of a realtor every single day. So I think about my problems, what I've had to adjust to, keeping in mind who my audience is, and I talk about if I didn't know it and I know that I'm highly educated, I'm making the assumption that there are other people who didn't know. So accepting the fact that I know I don't know. Therefore, I need to share it.
Love it. Yeah, that's great. And I think, the lesson for me there is in some ways, you don't know what's going to resonate. You got to take some chances, right? You got to be a little bit vulnerable, but your audience will tell you when it works, right? And once you find those things, the rest of the future of your efforts are much simpler, right? Because, just come back to those wells over and over again, and we're going to be talking to the right people about the right things. So my selfish follow-up to that is, what if you're not the same age as your target audience, right? Because, I'm in my early 30s, and a lot of our audience is brokers who typically are in their 50s, if not 60s. So there's a lot of life experiences that I sort of haven't had yet, So what do you say to that? How do you find the things to talk about, or is that harder? What's your take on that side of things?
I tell people you need to then put yourself in that customer's shoes and do what that customer does, right?
Okay.
Because that's how you get that experience, and it makes life a lot simpler, right? And so going to what events would that realtor go to? Where are they going to hang out? And not only where will they hang out, where will they be comfortable? An example would be, we have a local title company here, and we used to do a boatload of events together around foreclosures and short sales. And I was always curious as to why would they always host a happy hour. And I would never stay for the happy hour because I'm not a big drinker and I need to get home. So that part I was not doing.
Yeah.
But I realized one day I stayed for a happy hour that as an industry, we like to consume liquor after a great real estate event. And we would often tell all of our business. Therefore, the title company that was hosting the events could always come and follow up with us 24 to 48 hours later because we weren't 100% sure what we had told that person. So they're able to come back and engage us in conversation. That title company had a niche product to offer a certain event that most people weren't offering, to spend essentially a day with them, right? And then they would cap that evening off with almost a guaranteed appointment to come back and have dialogue with that realtor. Not that they necessarily knew what we were going through. They put themselves in the position to find out. So I would say always putting yourself in that position to be able to find that information out, because the more time you spend with that group of people, the more you're going to get to know them. I grew into my audience. I actually thought I was hanging out. I thought my audience was predominantly men because I'm the cool chick. And most of my friends are men. I have more men friends than I have women friends. But then I realized, Marki, that's not your audience. So I started shifting and pivoting and redesigned my website to give it a softer female feel to it, because I know that I'm rough around the edges. So I've made some changes and modifications because I understand what's important to my audience.
I love it. And we are running out of time, but I do want to ask this one question on that topic, which is, how did you determine who the audience was, right? Because you had your idea, you talked about analytics, and I'm familiar with a lot of the analytics. So just walk us through that. Where did you get that information in order to make that shift?
So I have 2 private Facebook groups on Facebook. I went into those Facebook groups and I downloaded, who that audience is. What's the age? Are they female? Are they male? I did the same thing on LinkedIn. I did the same thing on Instagram. That's how I know that 78% actually of my audience on Facebook is female. And I also know that that's my oldest age category, followed by then a Instagram that's 70% female. And it just went over into that 45 to 54. Because, see, most people would have you think there's not a bunch of 45 to 54-year-old women hanging out on Instagram. That's not true. And they're in my audience. And so just going in the back end, looking at your insights or your analytics to understand who's engaging with you and your content. And once I realized it was predominantly female across every platform, I said, oh, Marki, you're a little rough around the edges. You got to be honest with yourself. You should soften. So instead of like red and black are my company colors, they're going to be my company colors. But now my website has substantially more white space with red and black accents to soften it. So wherever I can now, understanding who that audience is, and that's going to be my audience. We're going to grow together into retirement. I need to make sure that I am keeping the feminine edge a little softer than what I'm used to, keeping in mind that my audience is dominated by women.
Love it. It's great insight. Very cool.
Thank you.
Well, I do think we are about out of time for today, but there's obviously a ton more we could have dived into here, so we'll have to do it again in the future. Before we sign off, though, I do want to give you a chance to give us your plug, right? Because I'm sure a lot of our viewers are thinking, man, I got to follow her, I got to go see her speak somewhere. Give us where they should go about doing that.
I wore a T-shirt the other day that says, I am aware that I am rare. I am the only Marki Lemons in the world. MarkiLemons. If you spell my name correctly, I dominate the internet for my name because I'm the only one in the world. Please feel free to connect.
I love it. Nice and simple. I don't know how, but there's a fair number of Nick Nee houses out there. So if you Google me, you're going to find some of the other ones. Cool. Well, this has been great. Thank you so much for joining me. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me. Glad to be here today.
Of course. Well, and for those of you tuning in, I want to thank you for watching this episode of Broker Breakdown. And please join us again on the next one. We'll talk to you then.